How to find float? How we will know that this activity is on critical path or not? If this activity is delayed, it will delay the successor activity or it will delay the whole project. So we need to do an exercise. Let's begin. On the top left corner you can see a box which has mentioned early start ES, D for duration EF, early finish, activity name LS late start, F float, LF late finish. So we have two types of method we use, forward path method and backward path method. So for finding out early start and early finish, we use forward path method. So before we begin, first we need to calculate how many paths we have in our network diagram. As you can see here, we have activity 1, activity B, activity J, activity K, activity L and activity N. So this is one path. The second path could be activity 1, activity A, activity D, activity F, activity G, activity L and activity N. Third path could be activity 1, activity A, activity D, activity E, activity H, activity M and activity N. And the fourth path, activity 1, activity C, activity I, activity M and activity N. So we have 4 paths. Now we need to calculate overall duration for each path. Like the first path 1, B, J, K, L, N. So we have 2 plus B 3 days. So this will become total 5 plus J 5. So total 10 plus 3 13 plus 3 16 plus 8 24. So the first path have duration of 24 days. Second path I, A, D, F, G, L, N. So we have 2, 4, 8, 5, 4, 3 and 8. So total duration required to complete this path is 34 days. The third one is 1, A, D, E, H, M and N. And total duration is 42 days. The last one, activity 1, C, I, M and N. So this requires 28 days. So the longest path is 42 days. So minimum required time that we need to complete this project is 42 days. And our critical path is 1A, D, E, H, M, N. That we can find out without finding any early start, late finish or early finish. You need to find out only critical path. So you will sum duration of all the activities in all the path. So ultimately you will find out the critical path. So once we have our critical path, we can start finding early start and early finish. So the early start of the first activity is 1 and early finish is early start plus duration minus 1. So for the first activity, activity 1, we have duration of 2 days. So 1 plus 2 minus 1 is equal to 2. So early finish will be 2. So for the next activity, for the successor activity, our early start will be early finish of the predecessor activity plus 1. Like activity 1 required 2 days, day 1 and day 2. Now we are on activity B. So activity B will start on day 3. So day 3 we will be early start and activity B has a duration of 3 days. So 3 plus 3 minus 1 is equal to 5. And activity J, early start will be 5 plus 1, 6, and early finish will be 6 plus 5 minus 1, so it will be 10. So activity K, early start will be 11, duration 3 days, and early finish 13 days. Activity L have two predecessor activities, so activity K and activity G. So before we put any early start, we need to find out what is early finish of activity G. So for doing that, we will go back on activity 1 and we will take early finish of activity 1. Activity A, 2 plus 1 is equal to 3 plus 4 days duration, early finish will be 6. For activity D, early start 7, 8 days duration, early finish 14. We will jump to activity F. So 14 plus 1, 15, 5 days duration, minus 1, 19. So activity G, 20 plus 4 minus 1, 23. Now when we are doing forward path method, we will use the big duration. Like early start, we have two activities, activity K and activity G. So early start, we cannot start activity L until we have activity K and G both finish. So let's say if we take here 13 plus 1, 14, but on the day 14, our activity G is not yet completed. So we cannot start activity L. So when we are using forward path method, we take the biggest duration. Like in this case, we will take 23. So 23 early finish plus 1, 24 will become early start of activity L. 3 days duration minus 1, 24 plus 3 minus 1 is equal to 26, and we will go to activity N. Here activity N also have the same scenario. Two predecessor activities, activity L and activity M. So we cannot use 26 as an early start of this activity, because at the day of 26 we don't know if activity M has completed or not. So we need to find early finish of activity M. So by doing that, we have calculated until activity D. So from D to we will go to activity E. So 14 plus 1, 15 plus 6 days duration, 21 minus 1, 20. Activity H, early start will be 20 plus 1, 21. 6 days duration, 21 plus 6 minus 1, 26. So from activity H, we will go to activity M. We will use early start 26 plus 1, 27. 8 days duration, 34. So we cannot start activity N until activity L and M both are completed. And we have estimated early finish of activity L and activity M. So in this case, activity L will be completed on day 26, but activity M will be completed only on day 34. So we cannot start activity N until day 34. So day 34 activity M will complete, day 35 we will start activity N. So 35 will be as an early start of activity N. Early start of the first activity is always 1, because we cannot start our project on day 0. It has to be project day 1. And early start of any successor activity will be early finish of the predecessor activity plus 1. So this we will use to find out early start and early finish. So we have early start and early finish of all the activities. Early finish of activity N is 42 days. That means we need minimum 42 days to complete that project. And also we have late finish, that is also 42 days, because our project requires only 42 days, so we will use 42 as a late finish. So from here we will use backward path method to find out late finish and late start. So we will start from activity N. We have 42 as a late finish and activity duration is 8 days. So we will use formula late start is equal to late finish minus duration plus 1. So late start is equal to 42 minus 8 plus 1, that will be 35. So 35 will be late start for our activity N. We have activity M and activity L. Late finish we will have from our successor activity, as we have already find out our early finish and now we are using backward path method, so we will have definitely late finish date from our successor activity, that will be late start minus 1. And the formula we will use for late start is equal to late finish minus duration plus 1. So as you can see, activity N has 42 days as a late finish, minus 8 days duration plus 1 is equal to 35. Activity M, 34 minus 8 plus 1 is equal to 27 days. So when we are using backward path method, after M we have two activities, activity H and activity I. So we will use 27 minus 1 as a late finish for both the activities, that is 26. So we will use the same formula 26 minus 6 plus 1. So we will find out late start date of all the activities. When we have early start, early finish, late finish and late start, we can find out float of all the activities. So activities on the critical path will have zero float. If there is an error, if any activity on critical path has more than 0, that means we have done something wrong while calculating our early finish or late start. Now how we will find out float? Float is late finish minus early finish or late start minus early start. So in activity N we have 0 float. 42 minus 42 is 0. Activity M is on critical path, 34 minus 34 is 0. Activity H on critical path, we have 26 minus 26 is equal to 0. Activity E on critical path, 20 minus 20 0, 15 minus 15 0. So activity D on critical path, 14 minus 14 0. Activity A on critical path, 6 minus 6 0. Activity 1 on critical path, 2 minus 2 0. So if any activity on this critical path is delayed for 1 day, our whole project will be delayed for 1 day. If any activity is delayed for 2 days, our complete project is delayed for 2 days. So as another scenario, you can see activity L. Activity L has 8 days float. So this activity could be delayed 8 days without delaying project duration. So we are doing two activities, activity M and activity L. So we need 3 days for activity L and 8 days for activity M. We cannot delay our activity M, but we can delay a little bit for 8 days our activity L.